So, unfortunately this week, TV Asahi is taking the week off from its usual Sunday morning programming block, meaning no Kirakira Precure this week. That said, I still want to do something for this week, so I figured now would be a good time as any to start my little cooking series where I recreate many of the sweets made by our young cashier every week. Most of their recipes are on the official TV Asahi website, and there's a lot to choose from. Now, the obvious first episode choice would be Ichika's rabbit shortcake, which I had actually purchased most of the ingredients for, and was planning on doing this week, but then I realized the critical error I had made. I didn't have the right cake pan. Now, this is your standard 9-inch diameter, 2-inch tall cake pan, but the one they specify in the recipe is a 6-inch diameter pan, and judging by the video, it's at least 3 inches tall. Makes sense since it's meant to be a taller cake that can be cut in half. I swear, I looked all over for a pan of those dimensions, but I couldn't find it. So I had no choice but to turn to Amazon, and sure enough, they had exactly what I was looking for. So I ordered it, and I was hoping I could get it in time for this recording. And then Amazon being Amazon, they took until at least last Wednesday to process my order. Now I think it's gonna take at least until Monday to get here. Still, that gave me time to think, and then I remembered something important. The first actual sweet we ever saw Ichika make wasn't her shortcake, but rather the Mofurun cake she made for the Maho Girls team in their final episode. So I figured I could make something like that, and while they did not have that exact recipe on their website, they did have the next best thing. The Mofurun Sakura Muffins from the Dreamstars film. Yeah, sure, they didn't make them in the actual show, but they could still act as a bridge between the two seasons. So let's just consider this an episode 0 to this little series that I'm taking Samantha Poel's advice and calling it Kirakira Precure Sweets in Real Life. Now for the muffins themselves, you really don't need that much. Just 1 egg, 80 grams of sugar, 60 grams of vegetable oil, which came out to like about 1/4 cup for me, 50 grams of plain old yogurt, 50 milliliters of milk, which is like about 1/4 cup, 120 grams of cake flour, and just a single teaspoon of baking powder. Just start off by beating your egg until it's all nice and scrambled, then pour in your sugar and just keep stirring until it's all nice and incorporated. Then slowly drizzle in your oil. It's kind of like making mayonnaise. You don't want to just dump it all in or else you'll end up with a water and oil-esque effect. As soon as you get the last drop of oil and all nice and mixed in, you can then add the remainder of your wet ingredients. First the yogurt, and then your milk. You can kind of use it to help get those little bits of stubborn yogurt out of your cup. Now that all the wet ingredients have gotten to know each other, it's time to get out your hand sifter and toss in your flour. Kind of don't mind it spilling out, that's just me. And of course your baking powder too. Slowly sift it in, just keep sifting, stirring till you're about halfway through and then just let it rip. Be sure to scrape down the sides of the bowl and be careful not to overmix it. In fact, even if there's a few lumps, just leave it, it'll smooth out by the time it gets to the muffin tin. Speaking of which, get yourself a tin lined with 6 baking cups and just spoon it in. Now I like to use this disher scoop, but I'm sure a regular spoon will work as well. Just be sure to divide the batter up evenly. And with that, it's into a 325 degree oven. This goes for 20 to 25 minutes. "25 minutes later and they're done, and while these didn't quite rise as much as I was hoping, they did suffice for what was coming next. I just took them out, put them on a cooling rack, and then moved them aside so that I could break out the most important ingredient in all of these Precure recipes, heavy cream. This baking series is not going to do any favors for my blood pressure. Anyway, we're going to make 2 different toppings, both using 100 milliliters of cream each. One would be a strawberry cream using a tablespoon of freeze-dried berries and half a tablespoon of sugar. Oh yeah, in order to actually mix it into the cream, we're going to have to turn these into powder, so I just put them in my food processor. The other topping would be a ganache with 25 grams of chocolate of your choice. I personally like my chocolate the same way I like my magical girl anime endings, bittersweet. I told you we're not gonna bring that one up ever again! The last thing we'll need is another reoccurring item for this series, chocolate pins, and boy are these things hard to work with, but we'll get to that in due time. In the meantime though, we'll loosen up the chocolate in them by putting them in a warm water bath, and thus we can move on to the main chocolate component in this recipe. I brought the cream to simmer over the stove, poured out the chocolate into a larger bowl, and poured the hot cream over it. I stirred it up until it was all melted down, and into the refrigerator it went while we worked on the strawberry cream. I also happened to need to get something out of the freezer while I was there. I got myself a big bowl of ice and poured some water into it to make a chili bath. This would help whip up the cream, but before we get there, I had to make sure all of the ingredients were acquainted with one another. First, I mixed up the sugar and the strawberry powder together, then slowly mixed in the cream. This was just to make sure the final product actually tasted like strawberries throughout, and not just cream with occasional strawberry bits here and there. Once everyone was nice and friendly, it's into the ice bath, and you know, I'm way too lazy to try and mix this up by hand, so I let technology do most of the work for me. I mixed it up until soft peaks were achieved. Now back to the ganache. It's thickened since we last saw it, but it's still not quite there. Thankfully, we still had this nice ice water bath on hand, and this time I was determined to beat some air into it with my whisk, and then I remembered. I had one more clean mixie attachment left, so I just switched to the hand mixer again. This is just how I roll, my friends. Again until soft peaks. With that, I moved it into a piping bag with a star tip on the end, and we were all set to construct our muffin. First, a layer of the strawberry cream, and then I tried to draw in a Mofurun pattern on the cream to make piping a little bit easier. I say tried because I think I ended up drawing more of a cookie cat than a teddy bear, but hey, at least they're both sweets in the end, right? Anyway, I then piped on the ganache, making sure to leave a little opening for Mofurun's mouth, and then came the nightmare that were these stupid chocolate pens. Sometimes they would get stuck in the tube, so I had to use a butter knife to cut it off, and even then, it still didn't land in place, so I then had to use that same butter knife to adjust it, and then sometimes they would reharden really fast, so I then had to put them under hot water again. It was just a pain. Next time, I might put the pens in hot water a little later just to make sure that they loosen up at the right time. Anyway, I used the plain chocolate pen to draw in Mofurun's mouth, then the blue pen for his eyes, pink for his earlobes, and yellow for his pupils. And well, I ended up with something that looks more like Ichika's nightmare face from the latest episode, so maybe that counts for something, at least a minor success. Nonetheless, it was finally time to take off my apron and move on to tasting, and yes, I'm using a fork and knife. There was no X-Aid this week either, so I needed something to give me my fix somehow. Okay, so the muffin itself was nothing really special. I think even if it did rise a little more, it wouldn't change the fact that this is a very plain recipe. Hell, now that I think about it, we really didn't even use that much sugar in these things, did we? That said, this frosting was great. The freeze-dried strawberries have a very concentrated flavor to them that's carried over into the cream. It goes pretty nicely with the ganache itself. So those elements alone drove me to finish this muffin. Now as for my final thoughts, I obviously love the strawberry, or in this case, Sakura cream, and I can only hope the character it's based on can live up to these high expectations. As for the muffin itself, Overall, while I probably would never bake these muffins again, I did like the combination of the strawberry cream and the chocolate ganache, which I'll probably use for a future cake or something. In fact, as I'm uploading this video, I'm probably making something for Father's Day. But anyway, this was a fun sort of pilot for this series, and if you think I should continue with or have your own thoughts, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, next time, I'll be making Ichika's rabbit shortcake whenever my damn pan gets here. But until then, farewell for now, my friends, and I still got these muffins left over. You know, there's probably a certain cross-eyed flying horse that would appreciate these no matter how tasteless they are.